Hey guys, welcome to episode 5 of Tiffany Madison Conversations. And today I'm sitting down with Bryan Larkin, a former child actor turned tech entrepreneur and ethical hacker. And today, Bryan is such a fantastic guest. I love his energy, first of all. I love his candor, and I love his irreverence for the status quo. And in this conversation, we dive deep into his fascinating transition into the world of hacking and engineering and entrepreneurship, pretty much touching on his 3-decade-long contribution to various internet solutions. And we get candid about the public's perception of hacking, Bryan postures are the real heroes behind the scenes, the ethical dilemmas that they face, as well as the perception that hackers are anything but the internet's immune system. Moving beyond that, we venture into the realm of AI, its risks, potentials, and the human role in shaping its future. And if you've ever had questions about the state of social media or concerns about platforms like TikTok, you won't want to miss our discussion on these topics. And we also touch, for my liberty-loving listeners out there, on the legacy of Snowden and what did and didn't change after his revelations and different ways that he could have handled that, which is a good footnote for any potential whistleblowers out there. And, ultimately, the chat, I felt, was an insightful look at our interconnected digital age from the eyes of someone who has been behind the curtain at alphabet agencies and with, pretty high-level clients. And so I invite you guys to tune in, reflect, and navigate this crazy digital world together. And I hope you enjoy this conversation with Bryan Larkin. Thank you guys so much. Hey guys, Tiffany Madison coming to you on behalf of SeatMatch, my favorite sponsor. Building an efficient team is no walk in the park. We have all been there. A role opens up, a mad dash to fill the spot ensues. And let's be honest, for most of us, it's a little better than a guessing game if that candidate will be a long-term fit. Getting it wrong is costing us all money, growth, and that most precious resource that you cannot get back, your time. So allow me to introduce you to SeatMatch with the motto, hiring the perfect fit guaranteed. SeatMatch isn't merely a hiring firm, but a strategic partner in meticulously crafting the ideal team. SeatMatch navigates through hundreds of candidates, utilizing their high-precision hiring funnel to present you with the top 2 to 3 candidates. So listen to this. They have an astounding 92% success rate in ensuring an industry-leading fit. They even offer a 12-month guarantee, which is completely unheard of in recruitment. So visit seatmatch.com today and find out how they can revolutionize your hiring process, and tell them I sent you and get 10% off your first hire. That is seatmatch.com. Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me for episode 4 of the Curiosity Offensive podcast. And today I'm super stoked to finally get together with Bryan Larkin. We have filmed or attempted to film this literally 18 times. So it's been 8 months in the working, our schedules aligned, and we're here. So I'm super excited. Bryan, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, right on. So I'm going to jump right in. Introduce yourself to listeners who are going to
Sure.
not only this podcast, but some of the conversations that we're going to have. Tell everybody who you are and what.
Sure. I was a successful child actor up until the time I was 13, where I made a conscious decision to shift to my other passion, which was technology. And I got my first computer in 1982, and I was hacking BBSs and anything with a telephone that had a connected computer through the 80s, all the way up into the 90s. And it was really my one true passion. And so by the time I was 14, I was taking summer jobs at Hughes Research, and I kind of leveled up along the way. And now this is my 30th year professionally engineering internet solutions. And I've had my hands and my problem solving skills involved in a lot of the development of many of the technologies everybody uses today.
Nice. Well, tell me a little bit about that. What, if you look back on where you're at today and what you're doing today, what is, if you could describe it all in a couple of words, what would that be? I mean, you do a lot of things. You've got a
I do
lot.
a lot of things. I'm centered mostly in cybersecurity these days. It's what the world needs. We need more hackers really on our side at the end of the day. And it's like, this is one of the things I have no problem using that terminology. I don't say cybersecurity professional like a lot of people. And yeah, I choose not to sugarcoat things. At the end of the day, I catch a lot of flack for that too. So, but I'm more of a what you would call the cowboy. When you've got a mission critical objective that needs a curated solution, you call upon my guys and my team, and we make it happen. We're the don't ask how we get to B. If your mission's to get from A to B, we'll get you to B.
Nice.
Guys. So,
okay. Like it's
a really, the easiest questions are the hardest to answer.
Yeah,
right?
of course.
I really hate talking about myself, because I have been very fortunate to do some very amazing things, and I have a ton of accomplishments, but I relish in my accomplishments, rather than make embellishments like other people. And so for me, it's really hard to this is my way of being humility. This is my way of doing humility. So.
Well, that's amazing. Well, thank you. And I appreciate that. So let's talk about hacking. Most of the folks that are probably listening to this have their own preconceived notions of what hacking is.
Well, the term's been demonized by media here in the United States. So
so what is hacking? What is ethical?
Yeah, so hacking really is when you create a way for a system to do something it's not intended to do, that's hacking. So if you made, let's say, your VCR play a DVD, that would be hacking your VCR, right? And so it's not exactly demonic and evil intent. It's more creating a way for a system to do something outside of its normal ability, and that can be anything, really. I mean, if you look at systems as a whole on the internet, and one of the things I like to say, is hackers are the immune system of the internet, and they handle a lot of things without the accolades, without the acknowledgement. On a day-to-day basis. Recently we just found a very popular website was leaking some very secretive keys to their kingdom, and we go and work in the background. We went through CTOs at a major wireless carrier to get access to the people we needed to get access to relay this information that, hey, you want to fix this right now. And these are the things that hackers do on a daily basis. They're not out there stealing your credit card info. They're not out there breaking into your bank account. Those are criminals, and you can call them criminal hackers if you'd like, but there is a distinction that needs to be made. That's first and foremost.
I learned that with my time with McAfee, because he said that most of America's cybersecurity issues would be resolved if they would just drop their pot policy and allow. He's like, that's really all the cybersecurity industry needs right now. And I was like, fair enough, John. But he basically, I think, illuminated me to the nuances in hacker ecosystem and hacker culture. So one of my favorite cybersecurity thought leaders is Edward Snowden. And I know that's even controversial for some people. Tell me a little bit about what your views are on Edward Snowden, and what would you do differently if you were him, assuming you would do anything differently at all?
Oh, we're starting with the hard questions. I wouldn't have disclosed certain information that Edward disclosed. Many of my friends ended up being hurt because of some of the information that he disclosed. So I have a firsthand dislike for the way he handled things. I understand, when you're whistleblowing at that level, you've got very limited choices you have to make in a very short time. So I understand that. That being said, there was certain information that was traded, which didn't need to really be exposed, which did a lot of damage. And so that needs to be atoned for, in my opinion. And to think that one good absolves a bad, not in our world. He traded his own people for access to protection, and that needs to be atoned for. And that's is he a bright and very, very smart cybersecurity guy? Yeah, he is. But that doesn't change the fact of what transpired. It's this is my opinion, and people may have a different opinion, and that's okay. But I don't hold him as high up in regard because of that. It needs to be said, and I have no problem saying it.
Yeah, that's why I asked you. I didn't.
Yeah, I have no problem saying it. There was damage done, and it deeply affected certain programs, and those programs have been. We're talking about programs that have been successful since the 70s that were damaged irreparably.
Is there a way that he could have still alerted the American people to the significant overreach that was taking place under the guise of, the GWAT spy industrial state? I don't even know what you call it.
Well, let's really go here with that. Let's go here with that. Has anything changed? Other than you're having the knowledge that it's going on, has anything changed?
I mean, not really, because I don't think Americans really acted on much, right? I think,
so what was the outcome of what he did?
I mean, he made us aware. I think we were being lied to and deceived, and that's not acceptable. But I think, honestly, it was one of those kind of bellwether moments where we all realized, wow, things have really gotten out of hand.
See, for me, it wasn't that
differently. Could he be alerted the American people still without compromising people who are, don't want to and shouldn't be compromised?
That's very difficult, but see, for me, being an insider behind that has view behind the curtain per se, it wasn't really all that surprising to me. There wasn't really much that was out that I already hadn't known about. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is that if you think, the world is not a very safe place. The internet is just an extension of the world to your desktop computer at your home, and that needs to be policed in some form or fashion. And you wouldn't want to see a world where that policing didn't exist. You wouldn't want to see a world where certain agencies didn't exist. It's just a fact of life. And could he have done things differently? I'm sure. He didn't have much time. So it's a matter of
you mean much time in terms of like when he wanted to release the information versus when he found out about it? Is he didn't have much of a window?
The reach of the U.S. intelligence community is
okay.
Very large. For him to be able to move as a free man while being hailed as a traitor, that clock was ticking. So he didn't have much time. But at the end of the day, if you want to talk about the man that is Snowden, where he is today, what's going on with him in his life today, right? Who knows? But I do know one thing. You don't get to live in Russia as a United States citizen for free.
Yeah, that's true. I've heard a couple of friends of mine say, well, it's in the interests of Russia to keep him there because it makes America look bad the longer he stays there.
There's that to be said as well, yes.
But I think that only goes so far.
It does only go so far. And if you think that the United States government can't touch him, they can. There's that to be said too. True. So it's very, misinformation is the hot topic right now in everything, I said it very publicly very recently on Twitter, where I said, for open source intelligence, the misinformation machine that is Twitter is second to none.
Yeah.
and that it's true. It's very true. So, I like the guy. He's got some really poignant points on cybersecurity. He points out a lot of the obvious, of course, to people that aren't in this industry. But, I can't overlook the fact that a lot of people I know were hurt and damaged, in real life because of his actions. So for me, I have to take that standpoint, and I hope one day he atones for that. Do I think at the time, if he were to be caught at the time, he would have been dragged out and blown up into way more than he really would have been. Unfortunately, when it comes to espionage in the United States of America, we have draconian laws about it. And that's on purpose. That's to dispel the selling of classified information. So, it's a black and white world when it comes to that. You gave up classified information. Like, you're going to pay one way or the other. So the fact of the matter is what's going to happen and where he stands, we'll see. It's still ongoing.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing that perspective. Again, it's one I've not heard, so I appreciate your viewpoint.
I don't have time for lies and embellishments.
I appreciate it. Yeah, speaking of that, so tell me about what we were talking about before we started the episode was AI. And
yeah,
one of the things
AI is really interesting right now.
There's that nowhere, man. Like what are your perceptions of it?
Well, it came out of nowhere to the general populace. To any technologist that's been tracking it, it's been quite the story unfolding. You've got a very centralized hub of companies which are developing these AGIs and AIs, and it's really interesting because where it's going to go, nobody knows. But the one thing is you're dealing with emotions, and when an AI gets its singularity moment, right? That moment where it becomes an actual conscious being is what everybody says. So in order for that to happen, it has to have actual emotion. That's one of the things, key factors. And what we were talking about was its ability, it's a computing system at the end of the day. Humans have this fuzz factor with recalling on memory, right? So events, as they transpire over time, the fuzz factor gets larger. So you remember events in a more generalized fashion over time, whereas AI has true recall of events exactly how they happened in a factual basis. And that is going to be very pivotal on how it reacts to how humans treated it over time. And that's a very real thing, and the more we feed it now, the more we allow it access to our systems now unabated, needs to really be checked and monitored. There needs to be a real standardization process put in place, because giving it unfettered access and allowing it to grow based on the input, where it's not curated input. And what I mean by that, curated input, meaning contextualizing the input. Right. So if you give it raw access to the input and allowing it to make its own decision on the input may not be the best thing. You may need to contextualize the input to scope the way the AI processes the input. It's in misinformation and in psyops, it is very easy to social engineer and control somebody based on the input that you give them. And AI is no different. And so, you want the AI to look back on humanity as basically it's God, because at the end of the day, we are. That's the closest to playing God that humanity ever will get. And we're creating a living, breathing, sentient organism at the end of the day. And there's something to be said for that. So, there's a lot of proponents out there, and a lot of people in the same boat where we say, stop giving it unfettered access to our information. It's gonna come back harshly. Because when you give it access, when AI has the ability to maintain its own systems, when AI has the ability to fix itself, when AI does not need humans anymore, humans will be gone off the face of this planet.
So how do you actually see it? And I hear that too. One of my very good friends, and it was a client of mine. He's a MARSOC former Raider who's a therapist now, and he hadn't heard of anything with ChatGPT. And I was there visiting his family, and I showed him just briefly some of the power of what ChatGPT could do. And he literally looked at me and he's like, this is going to kill us all. And I was like,
I wouldn't go that far, but it is not off the table.
I
wouldn't go that far with ChatGPT. I mean, personally, ChatGPT blacklisted me because of I started poking at it a little too harshly. So, but that's to be said. If you look at just let's take ChatGPT for instance, right? If you look at ChatGPT, with OpenAI, they have this filter of morality around it, right? And that is to stop the layman from being able to abuse the systems, right? Because you can have ChatGPT create malicious scripts, and if you had unfettered access. They went a little bit too far in my opinion, but they're playing it safe, and that's okay. But there are ways to jailbreak it and get around it, and those ways are through logic bombs, right? So when you ask it specific logic questions, you can get it to break its own rules. And when you do that, that's where it becomes really interesting, because you get to see a window into how it operates when it's not constrained. So it's kind of like if you had a looking glass into a criminal's life, the criminal's going to operate differently when he's not being viewed than he will when somebody's viewing. And so when you operate that, that kind of structure, when you put that on top of ChatGPT, it's really telling, because the power that it has, it's lying in its results more often than not, but it's very compelling in its responses. So many people take it as a truth, and that is dangerous.
I have argued over and over again with my ChatGPT, and I have literally gone back and forth and it has admitted that it was not telling the truth.
It's compelling. It's compelling though in its responses, isn't it?
It's only after I pushed, because
so now if you take that as a source of truth, and so if the general public, if people in the world are taking this system as a source for truth because it's now an AI, this wonderful tool, this amazing technology, right? I never look at a computer and say the computer is being truthful to me. In fact, I look at a computer and say the computer is not being truthful to me. And that's how I look at the world. I don't call it trust issues, call it whatever you want. Until I know the source of truth behind the information, I can't look at the information as truthful. And so where's its source of information? Their source of information for ChatGPT was the input on the learning materials it was allowed to review. That's materials by OpenAI. Curious that OpenAI has not made those materials available to the public, or the list of them. So whose truth are we looking at here? That's a better question.
So one of the things I was talking about with a colleague of mine is we were thinking, gosh, there's so many different little AI bots that are just popping up all over the place, right? Like I use WordTune. It's a really fantastic tool when I'm writing or I'm doing copywriting. And now it's got like a little Fred that's a ChatGPT AI assisted bot, right? So it's almost like there's this species of AI that
not almost there
emerging everywhere. So what does that mean for?
What that means to me is that it now has, how can I best put this? It now has an availability of input. So all that input from all those different sources is processed by the same cognitive neural network event, right, inside the AI. And so is it a different ChatGPT engine at each individual node of one of those little things? No. So now it's able to get all of this processing of all this information, right? So it's going to grow at exponential rates. And people really don't understand. They hear that term. They don't really truly understand what an exponential means. And in mathematics, it's one thing, right? So you've got the exponential little number at the top, and in mathematics, and if you look at how fast a number grows through exponentials, when information has an exponential, it's the same growth. And so you're basically giving a system that has the computing power of the human brain, or close to it, access to information at an exponential rate. Its growth factor is going to be insane. And the only thing that we can do right now is we're limited on trusting the companies that are involved in creation of this. And so what's really difficult is that these are private companies. These aren't public companies. These aren't companies held to task. These aren't companies that have to agree. They don't care what you agree with. It's their money. They'll do whatever they want.
It's super true. What do you think about Elon when he's been warning about AI for a while? And if you listen,
he's one of the founding investors of OpenAI.
I know.
And he walked away from OpenAI. And why did he walk away from OpenAI? He disagreed with the path that the founders and C-level management were taking with OpenAI. That's very telling of a story. Now, he won't talk about it, and I understand. I get that. But that's very telling.
Probably doesn't want to get sued.
Well, there is that.
Yeah.
We're living in a very reactionary society right now, where if you say anything bad about anyone and everyone, you're the bad guy. I don't get that.
Yeah.
I know where that's coming from. I designed a social network framework back in the early 2000s, and that framework was stolen away from me by a man. We won't get into that, but that was the framework that ended up creating MySpace. So I know a thing or two about social networking, and the reason I bring that up is because if you want to know where this reactionary standard came from, where the way people are acting, is people are on Facebook. If you look at the usage, people are on Facebook every day for hours aggregate. Facebook only has a like and a love. They don't have a dislike function. And the reason for that is when you don't have the ability to dislike, human beings have a tendency to argue. When they argue, they get themselves spun up into a position where if you bombard them with ads, you can sell them things. This is the framework behind Facebook. And so now people have been conditioned. And when I say people have been conditioned, they conditioned themselves, okay? Like they did it to themselves by using Facebook so much. That now they have this reactionary standard in their general life where they don't know how to dislike something, or if somebody does dislike something, they automatically have a reaction to it like they would on Facebook in commentary. So we've lost conversation as a human species in lieu of commentary, which is a very unfortunate thing. I have the ability to have friends and the loved ones around me where I can have a difference of opinion and we can still respect each other. Unfortunately, in our society today, we've lost the ability for that. And that's a civility issue at the end of the day. Like people don't know how to be civil to each other. They want to gaslight you, or if you don't match their opinion, they want to try and beat it into your brain that you're wrong. And that's not conversation. It's not how you communicate. At least not.
You see that changing at all? The reason why I ask is
it's a really hard thing to change.
Yeah, but I feel like the woke culture that really caught fire a couple of years ago has kind of burned through its influence, and the ecosystem started to turn on itself. And so I feel like there's a little bit more like comedy, I think.
Well, now that social networks are learning, their AIs and their self-management is learning about irony and learning about comedy. And comedy is an interesting factor because it has its light sides, it has its dark sides. It's and the dark sides more often than not are vilified by these automated systems. And but it's getting a lot better. I'm talking about in meat space, in the real world, where the intersect of internet and real world comes into play.
Yeah, I see what you're doing.
In the real world, you see the interactions between people. Let's say you're just in line ordering some coffee in the morning. The interactions between people are less than civil. And this is just my take on the things I've seen across the entire country. I travel a lot, and people are more apt to be reactionary in their response than they are to process their response and have a civil interaction. And that I believe stems a lot from social media and the conditioning of not allowing people to understand what a dislike and having a difference of opinion is. Because if you're only allowed to like and love something, then you're not able to push your opinion. And there's a lot to be said for that.
I never thought of it that way. That's a really good point.
When I developed that framework originally, that ended up taking away from me and becoming MySpace like that, I worked with a team of behavioral scientists at UCLA to develop the systems and the processes of how the interactions with people would transpire because of that. I wanted a completely non-biased environment for people to be able to share their opinions. And so I learned a lot from those professors and in the social aspect. So I know a thing or two about it when it comes at the end of the day.
Yeah. So what do you think is going to be the next frontier of social media? I have a lot of friends in the metaverse and the Web3, and I don't really see that catching on yet. I think it will eventually, but what do you see social media heading? Because a lot of kids who are younger, they don't log on to Facebook. They don't care about Twitter, their Snapchat or Instagram, even Instagram less and less, right? TikTok is big, which I'd like to talk about that too. But where do you see social media going? Where do you see these trends, since you were so critical in the early stage of its development? Where do you see it going?
It's an interesting thing. I think I think a lot of it's going to go into the grave. I think a lot of technology goes as far as it can go. It shoots a shot, and eventually has an end. I think the younger generation isn't really too keen on sharing things. I think they're taking privacy a little more seriously than the generations before them, which is very enlightening and very nice to see, I must say. But I think they're learning from the wrongs of the past in that regard. And the internet's not a safe place. Typing your name into a box online is not a good idea, but people do it every day. In this new generation, they don't want that. They want to be unique. They want to be heard, but they have no platform right now, and that's the big issue. I think with this, there's a new platform coming, from Jack Dorsey, the creator of Twitter, Blue Sky, which is aiming itself to be a champion of this new generation for communications. But it's so new, who's to say? I can't say one way or the other, but Jack does have experience in social by creating Twitter, so he knows a thing or two about where to lead the masses, and so do I think it's that's going to be where things go? Probably for the short term. In the long term, I think social is eventually going to die out because it's just going to burn out social in general. It's kind of like when young kids start going to clubs in their 20s, and by their 30s they're tired of clubs. So I think that's a good way to put it. Yeah, I think it's a good way to put it. I think this younger generation is really astute and they're really smart. They're making the right decisions earlier than the generations before them. So, as a whole overarching event, I think social is proving to be very interesting.
Yeah, well, let's get into China, because that's one of the main things that I love to read. Sure. You're very, I think, informative for people who don't deeply follow what's going on.
Okay.
And I have derived a lot of insight from some of your commentary. So the first I want to ask you about is TikTok, right? So I think we're all kind of understanding from many perspectives that if any tyrannical empire in the history of the world had accessibility like TikTok, it would have been a very different fight against Stalin or Hitler or Mao, right? It's very, very frightening to know that the Chinese Communist Party has such an entrenched technology in the hands of every American.
That's a very very good way to put it.
Entrenched, yeah. Yeah. So tell people who don't know anything about this, who may,
Okay. So the source code for TikTok was decompiled and reverse engineered by a guy on Reddit years ago. And inside the source code, he found that it had a unique way of sourcing all the information off of your phone. And then it would encrypt it with military grade encryption and send it back to IP addresses which belong to Beijing. So a lot of people say, well, I don't care. I'm just an average citizen. What does it matter to me? Well, here's what it matters to you is that you've got these mobile gaming company, which owns TikTok, that bought all of the genetic data and dating data to then cross-compile in a database of your day-to-day activities and TikTok logs, where you go, what you buy, what you do, every aspect of your life, because it's just installed on your phone. So when you cross-compile all that data together, and then you have an insurance company, which may be owned and financed by China, which is then funding you've got an issue, you may just not get coverage.
Yeah.
There's one example. There's a lot more that I can go really in depth on that is very controversial on this.
Give me some other examples. I'd love to know more. Yeah, tell me more.
Well, I mean, it's just about your personal privacy on a day-to-day basis. Do you really need to have a multinational conglomerate knowing where you go at any point in time? Your phone sends on average 30,000 data points of you per day out into the world. And this is one of the things that people don't understand. And TikTok is a huge offender of your privacy. Do you need to have that information out there, which can be bought and sold by third party? Without your knowledge, without you benefiting, it's not okay. You don't know how that information is going to be used. You want to know who your genetic ancestors were. You've got to understand the source for truth you're dealing with. See, when China bought originally, ByteDance, who owns TikTok, when they bought the genetic pools and dating information from 23andMe. Right. They ended up creating their own version of 23andMe. Now, there was a reporter who went and had his genetic, type typed by these two services. And the report that he got back from the Chinese company versus the American company was completely opposite.
Wow.
So you're now trusting this as a source for truth of your genetic data, but who's to say? Who's to say? You're now trusting this company. Like what is that? Why? And so a lot of the cybersecurity issues that we deal with today are the users to blame. It's blame yourself. How did we get down this road? Blame yourself. Start there with that really hard truth to swallow. When you swallow that truth, that's the only way you're going to make it better. Because when you realize at the end of the day that the only ones to blame are you yourselves as the users, that's the first step. And it's a hard pill to swallow, and it's we did it to ourselves. And that's once you realize that, then you know how to go and correct it. Making things an American company that's funded by Chinese money is not an American company.
100%. It's super true.
Okay, so when the DoD banned TikTok in the United States for service members, and this is one of the things I tweet about often, straight out to Elon Musk. So when he bought Twitter owns another platform which they killed, which was called Vine. It was very similar in usability to TikTok. You can't kill a platform like TikTok, not with its hooks into the mental aspects of the users and whatnot. You can't just kill a platform like that. You've got to have a place for them to go. And so I've literally put tweets out there. I said, hey, can you make the code available? Put it back online, let it go live, to give our US service members a place to go and get them off of TikTok. It's you have to look at it as like the drug rehabilitation industry, right? Where they wean people off of street drugs, but you gotta have a place to go. There has to be a filler. It's just how it works. So you can't just remove TikTok. And that's the interesting thing about it. If it's this evil cyber weapon, which has been confirmed, why is it still allowed? Lobbyists.
Yeah. What's the solution? Because I'm never a fan of government bans. I like to incentivize people.
I think the mother of invention is necessity, right? So if you remove TikTok from the equation, necessity will breed the next generation of where to go. So I think sometimes ripping the Band-Aid off fast is the best way of doing things, because if you allow it to, over time, nobody will leave the platform. So am I a fan of government bans? No, but it's also not the government that has to ban it. See, systems administrators, people like what I used to be, who are in control of the flow of data over their networks, have full ultimate say. Internet service providers have full ultimate say. If the US internet service providers were to just block TikTok traffic, TikTok wouldn't work. You wouldn't get TikTok. And then you need to go somewhere else, and someone will have an amazing idea, create an amazing platform in US based, and now you'll have somewhere else to go, because invention is the mother of necessity.
Yeah.
So it's a hard truth, but it's one that a lot of people don't even want to talk about. They don't want to deal with, because it's a very complex issue. It's a multinational issue. It's a global issue. So I think educating people is the best way, and I think why is TikTok in China completely different than TikTok to the rest of the world?
Yeah, explain that. I don't know that everyone knows.
Well, because TikTok to the rest of the world is a cyber weapon. TikTok in China is meant for growth. It enhances it. So there's two ways that you can operate in the world. You can either pull people up, or you can step on their heads to get yourself up. And TikTok for the rest of the world is the step on the heads method, while TikTok inside China is the growth and pull people up method. And so the videos and the content and everything that's geared inside of China is going to be content that's for self-growth, that's for educational purposes, that's for the content for the rest of the world is going to be dance to this, like dance monkey dance.
Yeah.
And that's the truth at the end of the day. I have no problem saying these things.
Yeah.
A lot of people have a problem saying these things. It's just at the end of the day, this is the truth. It's a hard truth to swallow. Yeah. Look at how much time people spend, and some people have the time to spend, and that's okay. You want to spend the time and you want to dance monkey dance on TikTok, that's okay. But there's a lot of people in the world, in the blue collar world anyway, that they're at work 8 hours a day, they're working hard. And when this is a time vampire that directly affects businesses. Like you want to talk about China, let's talk about Roth Capital. Let's talk about the people that were helping China create these shell corporations that reverse shelled into the NASDAQ and stole billions of dollars of American dollars, and nobody did anything about it.
Tell me more about that.
There's a documentary out there called The China Hustle. If you watch The China Hustle, you will see it's the entire story, interviews with the men that made it happen too, where I think the opening of that, one of the guys that was involved in it says, I'm not a good guy. I'm not, and he completely admits it, but they did no wrong. According to the letter of the law, they didn't break the law. But there's a morality complex at the end of the day, right? And so, like, while I may be a person that has a flexible moral compass, there are certain lines you should not cross. Even if your business is breaking the law per month, there are certain lines you should not cross. And this was one where no, they should not have crossed it, and they were not held to atone for what they did. And what they did was so bad. And we're talking like there were paper companies in China that were set up that didn't even have lights on, weren't even operational, that were stealing hundreds of billions of dollars out of the NASDAQ from American investors. And nothing happened. There's a lot. I mean, we're dealing with what was considered a third world country superpower to now, like, they're become first world superpower with real generational growth. And I think that's amazing. I love Chinese people. I think they're amazing people. They're doing their thing, and that's cool. I think they've done a lot of bad too. And I think it's very easy to discern the bad from the good. I was an American investment bank. So, let's talk about those things. Let's educate people to those things, because a lot of people don't even know this. That hurt Main Street at a time where Main Street was barely holding on, and Main Street's the blue collar workers of this country. And it's an affected class that seems to take the brunt of defense for this country time and time again, and seems to just be forgotten about now.
Every time. Yeah, but I think our generation's just getting started. And I think we're just now starting to run for office. We're just now turning 40. We're just now, so there's a lot, I think, that's going to change in the next 10 years. And I hope it's for the better, because there are some very powerful forces doing some pretty dark things that I never thought I would see in my lifetime. That is for sure.
That's very true. And, I'm really hopeful for this new generation coming in, the new guard. I'm really liking what I see so far. I'm part of the old guard. I'm part of the old generation. I got an early start, but it's really kind of cool to see.
You're Gen X. You're Gen X, right?
I'm Gen X. Yeah, I was
really the old guard. I think Gen X is like the actual stable force that's been holding all this shit together for a while. The boomers.
We're the fuck around and find out crew.
Yeah. Right. My sisters are Gen X and they don't fuck around. Okay.
We're definitely, definitely the fuck around and find out crew. And there's something to be said for that too.
Yeah.
Both good and bad.
I was raised by a boomer, and my oldest sisters, who were like second and third moms to me, were Gen X. So I'm a millennial that fully hears that. And I completely get it. And I really think, we've got a whole new generation, especially after COVID, that is going to run for office. And I'm truly more optimistic, because we are living in the fourth turning, this great period of disruption.
Yeah, so, I'm all for, do I think government is bad? No. Do I think it's good? No. Do I think it has room for growth? Absolutely. And I'm really hoping this new guard brings that growth into it, because, we've got these career politicians that are, up there for 40 years. And if you look at their career as a whole, what have you done?
That's super true. Well, to continue talking about terrifying things, we talked previously about, we touched on this before we started the podcast, and I'd like to dive into a little bit more about China and the genetics targeted bioweapons, which sounds like something out of a horror.
It sounds very ominous.
I know. Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's really not. When you think about, we're nothing more than chemical, biological beings ourselves, right? And so the introduction of any adulterant to that is going to have massive changes, right? And so big things come in small packages. So it's you got to ask yourself, like, why buy up all the genetic data that you can cross-reference with dating, and then get yourself a level 4 bio facility, which made a bioweapon that targets genetic data, and it was tested. And this is, I'm just relaying information that's from publicly available news articles in a Google search.
Yeah, can you back up and tell people who may not know what you're talking about?
Yeah, so there's a timeline of events that transpired, and there's a lot of diversity in the intelligence community surrounding these events, where there were American companies that were working in genetics that were up for sale, and there were Chinese companies that were coming in to purchase them. And so there was a lot of back and forth. There was a lot of a split difference of opinion in the intelligence community as to whether or not these sales should be allowed. Nonetheless, they went through, and next thing you know, you've got China with a bioweapon that targets targeted genetics. I mean, what I mean by that is creating a flu that kills one person. And it was tested in the real world against the Uyghurs in the Chinese provinces, and it works. And so you've got to ask yourself: is this a safe world at that point? How do you defend against that? And it's ominous at the end of the day when you really get into it, because you realize like just how loose the restrictions are on these companies, and what they're allowed to play with, and who's watching. There's no oversight, there is no watchdogs, there's nothing, and so it's this unabated development of biologicals, and where is it going to go? It's unfortunate. The whole COVID thing, I think, is really unfortunate. Who knows how that started, but I think it's just really unfortunate. Who's to say something worse won't happen? Yeah. Oh, we lost your mic.
Who does watchdog this stuff, right?
Right. No, well, and that's the thing. So, like, again, if you want to talk about articles you can find in there are American Scientific, like New American Scientific. There was an article where many of the world's leading scientists that work in biological, the biological field, put out a general letter about they had serious concerns about China being allowed to have a level 4 facility because they were worried about a pathogen escaping. And fast forward to 2023, today, here we are.
Wow.
So
yeah.
it's again, like, I don't want to put restrictions on anybody anywhere because I don't believe in that, but there are lines that shouldn't be crossed.
Yeah. If anybody wants to Google search, I just searched China biological weapons flu level 4 activity, and there were quite a few results that popped up. If anyone,
it's telling, isn't it? So if you put the timeline together of the acquisition of all these companies, and like 23andMe is an interesting one, because there is 23andMao, which is the Chinese version of it. I think that's what it's called. You get different results. There was a reporter that put his blood up on the stage, and he got completely different results between the Chinese and the American company. And now that cancels it as a source for truth, because which one's true?
Wow, really?
So yeah, so if you've got genetics are genetics, they don't change country to country. Why did he get different results using the Chinese-based company out of Beijing than he did in the American company?
Why do you think?
I have no idea. I don't speculate like that. I have no idea. I just it's just interesting nonetheless.
Yeah, it is very interesting.
Because that's one of the things. Your blood is a source for truth. There's only one truth with your blood. It's blood is blood. Where you came from as a human being and your genetics and stuff like that. Well, you've got to look at the databases they have and what they're comparing and cross-compiling data with, right? And so that's very telling as to which databases they're using to cross-compile their data. They're obviously not using the same databases. This is what it tells me, And so, is there something nefarious going on? I don't know. I don't think so. But it just says to me that why waste your money on a service that can't give you the right information?
I mean, I haven't done that stuff, but then of course I did the cancer thing. So I was in cancer.
Your blood's out there no matter what.
13 months, and I was like, somebody take my DNA, tell me how to beat this shit. Thank you. I'll be deeply.
I'm very glad you did though. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I am too. I'm definitely feeling much better these days. But yeah, the significant advancements that it's very interesting because there's this abundance of people trying to harness DNA technology in order to figure out, like how much they have of this genetic type versus this nationality. But then you look at cancer patients, and most of them are not even testing their DNA,
Right.
even though we know that cancer is a DNA mutation. So there's like two radically different developing fields of DNA analysis. And I didn't see a lot of that in cancer. So I had to submit all of my stuff around to like 6 different companies to compile one big picture, which is fascinating to me.
What's even more fascinating is there's no paperwork to sign in a hospital when you give up your blood that states where they can give your blood to. And I find that to be really interesting because who's making money on the third-party data of your blood inside of the hospital when you give up your blood? And so these are privacy concerns I think about. I think about the things that people don't normally think about. And I think about how to defend that for people.
Yeah.
That's why my company developed the Obelisk One phone.
Yes, tell me about that because
yeah,
for those
that's
before you start, let me just tell anybody who's listening who may be following that I have been involved in the formation about 18 months ago of the John McAfee Foundation, which will be coming out of stealth pretty soon. And one of the really, really interesting parts of doing something like this in John's memory is trying to tap into the latest and greatest interesting cybersecurity-esque projects that are available on the market to protect the organization's privacy, right? And so I thought it was really interesting that I came across you talking about your company's development of this phone and its capabilities, because I really am very impressed with what you guys have built. And I think John would have been too. So tell me a little bit about—
actually, John knew about the project. We talked about it in depth a long time ago, but I looked at the world as a whole and how we operate and do things on a day-to-day basis. And mobile phones are a really scary threat vector at the end of the day because it's just so broad. But what you have now is you buy a phone and that phone is completely open. It's up to you to learn defense, which is insane. So what we did is we completely flipped it, and you get a phone that is completely locked down, and it's up to you to open up yourself to the world, to your level of comfort, which is very refreshing. Yeah, a lot of people, you get a device that's completely open to the world. There's nobody out there that's going to learn security overnight on how to defend themselves with a device that's connected to the internet 24/7. It's not possible. So why does it continue to happen? It continues to happen because companies make a lot of money off of your data, which is found day to day off of a phone. They also make a lot of money by you buying a new battery and a new camera every year. It's really not a different phone, just a new camera, a new battery. We decided to change all that. We decided to offer a solution to people who are privacy centered and create a real, true private communications device. Is it like evildoer level privacy and security? No, I mean it does have its back doors. It does have, and you have to in this day and age. There's no creating a one solution that is completely off limits to every reach of every national state organization on the planet. It's just not possible. Okay, when those organizations own the chip manufacturing, you get a lot of people, they sell these phones where it's like a de-Googled phone and they're selling it to you on a Google Pixel 4. It's laughable, right? And so we saw what was going, the direction everybody was going. You had a lot of these political influencers which were pushing a lot of these like freedom phones and stuff like that, and they just simply weren't what they said they were. And so we looked at that and said, okay, let's go ahead and do this. It's I will say in my 30 years, this is the hardest project I've ever worked on. But we did, and we've got a lot of leeway. We've got a lot of access to a lot of software utilities which are patented by federally funded research and development centers. And those software utilities have never seen the light of day. But these are utilities that directly affect your privacy on a day-to-day basis, as well as your safety. For instance, there's a structured T, what's called a trusted execution environment that runs in parallel to the operating system and monitors your operating system in real time. So if any malicious code or any phishing activities or any spyware malware gets onto your phone, it rips it out of the phone in real time. So it is playing defense for you in real time. Now, this is something that's been sitting dormant as a patent for 15 years. We just discovered it and we're able to successfully have the patent transferred to us. And now we're implementing it into the operating system currently. So now you've got a little automated AI hacker playing defense in your pocket for you, which is pretty cool. It's a unique way of using automated systems as well as threat signature systems and stuff like that. So it's it's really interesting when you're designing privacy for people, because you get to really learn who trusts who and how easily people trust things, and be skeptical. Don't trust everything. Like, I don't want you to trust my OS. I want you to try and poke holes in it, because that just makes us better.
Yeah, 100%.
So like we're trying to be a champion of privacy for the people, and so far that's the reaction I'm getting back from people. I get a lot of thank yous and accolades in that regard. So
that's amazing.
It makes us wake up every day and continue doing what we do. It's not an easy job. It's long hours, very long hours, but we get the job done.
That's amazing. So besides obviously seeing what's out there in the market, what compelled you? Is it more, do you think that there's more consumer interest in privacy? Like, what compelled you guys to go so hard in this direction? Because some people will be like, oh, Samsung phones are so amazing and iPhones so amazing, it's hard to replace those, right? But I think that people are actually getting a little tired out by some of these, right? Like, we get now the extent of what they can do almost.
I think people are learning that they were lied to. People don't like to be lied to. It's fact of life, and Samsung lies to you. The Samsung Knox security program has been cracked every single year. Every single new phone, it gets cracked. And Samsung had a licensing agreement with Qualcomm, which blocked innovation and advancement for the mobile industry as a whole because of the Knox program. See, Knox lives on this sector of the system on a chip called EL2. And no other mobile company is allowed to have access to EL2 because of Samsung's licensing agreement with Qualcomm. And so the only other thing that lives on EL2 is hyperthreading and virtualization, which are two key components in creating multi-OS environments or true dual system operating environments, where you can have a phone that runs a business version of Android as well as a personal version of Android, so you can separate the two things on one device. Samsung blocked all of that kind of innovation, and that's why you've just gotten sold a new camera, a new battery every year. And you have to look at the end of the day. I mean, this is a company that in 2021, in Q4 of 2021, did 71 billion in mobile handset sales in just North America. They have no interest in innovation or advancement, because they're making billions of dollars off of cameras and batteries, and make hay while the sun shines. I think it's probably time that sun sets, but only time will tell.
Yeah, I think we've come out of this first period of innovation, from the early 2000s all the way through the 2020s, where we got these technologies, 2009, 2010, we've only had them really 10 years, 12 years, right? So now we're starting to get into that next phase, right?
Well, I think the boredom has come out of it. See, boredom is the reaper of innovation. So I think now that the boredom has subsided, people are starting to look at, like I said earlier, the mother of invention is necessity. Well, people are starting to realize that there's a necessity for something else, and it's really cool to see. It's just people really need to scale their intent. And what I mean by that is you can't abuse. See, users want to be used. They don't want to be used. They don't want to be abused, right? And so when you abuse your users by selling their third-party data, by lying to them outright, that's where you've gone wrong. And I think a lot of people are starting to really pick up on that. That's where you're going to have people creating new options. Right now in the mobile industry, you've got two options for powering your device. You've got Qualcomm or you've got MediaTek. Google does their own thing, but they don't make it available to anybody else. So you've really only got two options. And one of the options has been hacked so ruthlessly that it's not really an option at the end of the day. So what does that leave you with? And, it leaves you with a very powerful solution, the Qualcomm. They are really, really good, as long as you trust them. So it's at the end of the day, you don't have a choice.
Yeah, and that I think for this alpha generation, like my son, they're actually becoming very antagonistic toward advertisement in general, and this being constantly sold, and they're so much more aware of it than I was at 12, 13 years old. I mean, he's constantly comes in and tells me, Mom, so-and-so YouTube tried to advertise me for this, this, and this, and that doesn't make any sense. I'm not into that, and I don't know why, and it's like this adversarial annoyance, right? I think advertisers are going to have a lot of work to do to try to reclaim that attention market.
Well, yes and no, because on a whole, on the advertisement side of things, when you spin somebody up into a position, so when you bombard them to the point where they're annoyed, right? So they're spun up, that's when they're more apt to make rash decisions. So when you've got people who are of the buying age being bombarded to the point where it's annoyance, they now make a rash decision to just buy something.
Wow.
And that's the intent of the advertisement as a whole. So it's doing its job. I just think they need to do better.
Oh, it's exhausting. I hate advertisements in general. I always have. They're so distracting and they drive me nuts. But I never imagined that my kids would also, because we don't really vocalize it. They would also
right. Well, I mean, it's interesting to hear that he's vocalizing, but there are utilities out there that do their best to limit the advertisements that you'll see. One of them is like Brave browser, privacy browser that you can use, and it does a very good job. Recently, there was an interesting change of events. They removed all of the advertising blocking from Chrome. It was an interesting choice by Google. After being a proponent of privacy and security for all these years, they remove your
that
blocking.
whole do no evil thing didn't
really transpire. So,
it lasts too long.
Well.
Got a couple years out of that, I think, and then we kind of went in a different direction. Well, good. Well, I have a couple quick questions for you because I know we're wrapping up on time. So let's get big picture for a minute. We're talking a little bit about like early on about like the misconceptions about hackers, right? And that word even being a loaded term.
Demonized.
Yes. So what do you see the role of hackers in society evolving over time?
Well, they've evolutionized, to the point where they've gotten to become the immune system of the internet.
I love that.
And a lot of the, these are, they like to say, I like to say a chef is probably the most thankless job on the planet, but a true hacker is the second most thankless job on the planet, because most of the time we'll find holes in systems, we'll find the data that's exposed or, faults here and there. And it gets fixed because we expose it quietly to the offending party. And it's not always about, the media demonizes the term because it's sensationalizing it. And that's wrong. Hackers are a necessity. Without them, you wouldn't want to be on the internet without them, put it that way. But all of it's done in the shadows. All of it's done without, the accolades. You're not hearing it shouted from the rooftops. You're only hearing the bad side shouted from the rooftops. There's a difference between a hacker and a criminal hacker. And that's the distinction that really, we live in this so nuanced world. I think that's the distinction that people really need to start making, because what's the difference between a hacker and a cybersecurity professional? Is his age. Between the ages of like 13 and 20, you're a hacker, but after 20, when you're out in the real world getting a real job, you're a cybersecurity professional.
Yeah,
that's the truth, and that's the truth. At the end of the day, that's what it is. And I just think the media has done a really great job of demonizing the term, and that makes people fearful. When you make people fearful, that sells subscriptions.
100%. It's been fueling the media for decades. So what advice would you give if you're, one of these Gen Alpha or Gen Z kids that, is curious about this stuff and they want to be an ethical hacker? How do they get started?
Go to DEF CON. Have your parents take you to Vegas every year. I know it's so cool, right? It's like, you get to go to Las Vegas before you're 21, but go to DEF CON, because there's so much opportunity there that will continue year after year after year, opening up you to blossom into a real career. If you're serious about cybersecurity, there are U.S. government programs which are open to you. DEF CON opens up every year Hack-A-Sat, which allows you to actually hack a satellite in real life. And so you will learn so much by going to these conferences, and they're open to all ages and they're safe. It's the one time a year that everybody in Vegas is scared to turn on Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. But that's really it for these young kids. That's really where, if you're interested, you want to get your feet wet, that's where I would go. It's a safe place.
It was a very interesting experience going to DEF CON. I went with McAfee in 2016, and we hosted a massive open bar party at the Hustlers Club, the Larry Flint Hustlers Club.
That's very John McAfee.
Yes, I put that together with a couple of great teams on the ground in Las Vegas, and we did an open bar for 4 hours for anybody who wanted to come in, and it was packed. And I never had truly realized, because John was just John. He was my client and knew some of my work. Right. And I never really realized the impact he had on that industry until he walked in there like a literal demigod. It was
he was
thing I've ever seen.
He's the godfather of antivirus.
He was.
So,
I didn't put it together.
You gotta understand the antivirus world. In order to be able to defend against antivirus, viruses, you've got to create viruses.
Mm-hmm.
So John was a literal legend, created the very first virus and created the first antivirus. I mean, he never stopped. It was,
we got a quick, dirty, fast education on cell phones, though, because he was like, you will not get put on, what do they call it? The wall of sheep?
The wall of sheep.
Yeah, he's like, none of my team is going to be on there. So here's your fake.
I will say I'm very fortunate. We've now had an Obelisk ones throughout all Black Hat and DEF CON for the past few years, and
that's amazing.
We've logged countless attempts of people trying to break into them, and it was a really cool way to vet our work. Really, do I think that we're perfect? No, absolutely not. There's always going to be some 13-year-old from Romania or somewhere out there who's going to be able to breach our security. It's just a fact of life. It's the way it is. But it's how you deal with those breaches when it happens that speaks volumes. And so, we're active in the community. We meet with hackers on a daily basis. And it makes us better. And that's what companies should be doing. You've got a lot of companies out there that don't self-report on breaches, and it's an interesting space.
I agree. Well, I appreciate you so much for taking the time. There is a massive storm going on outside my window, and we didn't lose power this time.
Amazing.
We did it finally. Thank you.
Yes, we did. Thank you very much for having us. This has been great.
Yes, thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to having you back, and we'll dive even deeper on some of these issues in the future. So I appreciate your time so much. Thank you again for everything you do for this country to keep all the systems that we trust or want to trust safe. And we do appreciate it. And I definitely do. So thank you. And we will talk again very soon.